Okay, now there's an awful lot to talk about here, so I'll try and start right away. Firstly, it's definitely worth it to sell all the items of males who aren't paired. It's not going to do you any good holding on to them. Now, I'll start with Edain. Now, Edain's son is a bow knight like Midale. So, I've paired Edain with Midale, so basically, since they're the same class, he'll inherit most of Midale's items. Now, I'm just buying the killer bow because, you know, it's a good bow and I want it to be inherited. Now, one really important thing here. See that I've given Midale the silver bow? This is really important because Edain's son can use silver bows right from the start because of Wulia blood, and he is really the only candidate for the silver bow. This is important. You might think that Brigid's son would be a good one to give it to, but he actually already comes with a silver bow automatically. All the children have an automatic inventory that it'll always have, and as it happens, he comes with a silver bow anyway. So, Edain's son is the only real candidate for the silver bow. Now, as for Edain herself, her daughter is a priest just like her, so just give her lots of staves. She'll be able to inherit most of Edain's staves, but things like Restore and Libro and Warp are all very good. Also, make sure to sell any offensive magic Edain had, because obviously the daughter won't be able to use them. Right, that's looking pretty good. Now, time to move on. Next is Ira. Of course, Ira's pretty easy. Since that hero sword is just so ridiculously broken, yeah, her daughter really won't need to inherit much other than that. In fact, you're pretty much safe if you just go with the hero sword. You'll want to be using it as much as possible so it gets to 50 kills, because once it does, and gets the critical bonus, she will become absolutely ridiculous. Like, if you thought Ira was crazy, wait till you see her children. Anyway, so this one, yeah, pretty simple. Now, since I've paired Ira with Holland, this next one is pretty simple too. Ira's son is a male sword fighter, like Holland, so just giving him lots of swords is a good idea. If you pair Ira with Holland, they'll be able to use any sword automatically. But if you paired Ira with Lex, then I'd recommend giving as many good swords to her daughter as possible, because the son won't be able to inherit any swords in that case, so you'd be better off giving them all to the daughter and having them sell them to the son later on. But since I've paired Ira with Holland, then the son will be inheriting these automatically. And really, Silver Blade is the main one. Silver Blade is probably one of the best items for him. It's the main one he'll be using. Doesn't hurt to have the Thunder Sword for range. Now, next up is Lachesis. Lachesis is much more complicated. Lachesis' daughter is a troubadour, which means that yes, she can only use swords and staves. So that's right, you'll need to sell all of Lachesis' weapons, apart from swords and staves. The return staff is very useful though. Return is very good. The daughter will automatically come with a relive staff, so that'll pretty much do her for healing purposes. In my case, when paired with Beowulf, she's not the best healer, but relive does really help. An extra life staff won't hurt, but return is a good staff to pass on. Also, make sure she's got that Earth Sword, just because it's still pretty useful, and I like to have it there because the Earth Sword is the signature weapon of Lachesis' daughter in Fire Emblem 5, so I like to have it there just for story reasons. Now, I kind of forgot something with Lachesis before, so I had to cut it over here. Slim Sword. Slim Sword is quite useful for her daughter. Yep. Certainly better than an iron one. Right, now for Beowulf. Now, Lachesis' son is basically the same class as Beowulf, which renders this one pretty simple, but just one main tip that I have: because of Hazel blood, her son will be able to use silver swords right from the get-go, so I'd recommend giving one to him. Certainly gives him some much-needed power in the beginning. As for the rest, well, I'm just sticking with Beowulf's items. Ironcutter and Wingclipper are actually pretty decent, especially Ironcutter, since there are a fair few armors at the beginning of the second generation. But the main one is that silver sword, basically. Just make sure he has it. Beowulf didn't end up with that great stats, but still. And next up, we have Sylvia. Now, for Sylvia, there's really only a few things. Now, the thing is that the ability to inherit items is really the only thing Sylvia has over her substitute. Like, as in, yeah, Sylvia's daughter. So, basically, the only ones you'll really need, though, are the Defense Sword, a Shield Ring is helpful, and the Knight Ring or Leg Ring is very useful. Of course, I didn't get the Knight Ring, and I still have the Leg Ring on Levin, so I'm not actually giving them to her here, but Knight Ring and Leg Ring, both, if you have them, I'd highly recommend having Sylvia's daughter inherit those. They're very useful. Now, as for her son, this is a bit difficult. Her son joins very late and very underleveled. However, if paired with Claude, Sylvia's son will be able to use any staff at all. Which means the best way to give him some immediate usefulness is just to give him as many good staves as possible. Things like Recover, Reserve, the Valkyrie Staff, Sleep or Silence as well, but Claude didn't really have enough gold to afford those, but good staves, which will give him some immediate usefulness. And remember to sell any offensive magic Claude had as well. Now, Fury. I'll go with Fury's daughter first, because she's mostly a simpler issue. She's a Pegasus Knight, just like her mother, so most of Fury's swords and lances are fine to keep, but yes, sell any staves. Now, I did make one mistake here. The Silver Lance I should have sold, because her daughter can't inherit it. She only starts with a B in lances. So, yeah, any weapons that the children don't start with a higher enough rank to use won't be inherited. So, yes, I should have sold that, but still. Anyway. And now for the much more complicated part. Since I have paired Fury with Levin... Okay, well, really, he doesn't need much passed down other than Holseti. Just make sure Levin got Holseti, and seriously, you'll be fine. So if Levin has Holseti and he's paired, he'll always pass it on to his son. I mean, Elwind isn't really necessary, but it helps if you got it, just for an extra form of attack. Yeah, make sure Holseti is fully repaired, though. That will really help you out later on. I'm just giving him the leg ring because, personally, I think his son with leg ring is just quite hilarious. But anyway, also, a staff. Like, some staves, if Levin is paired with Fury, because his son actually starts off as a sage. That's not a bad thing, by the way. That's far from a bad thing. But a staff, at least, may be useful. Of course, not like his son's going to have any shortage of funds. He can just buy any staff he wants, really, because he'll always have a huge supply of gold. Just make sure, whole setting. But if Levin is paired with Tiltu, you will want to pass down the Pursuit Ring as well. With Fury, that's not necessary. And speaking of Tiltu, I'm going to go through her preparations now. Tiltu's children are both mages, so they can use fire, thunder, and wind magic right from the start, but actually what combination of tomes to pass down to them is a somewhat interesting issue, okay? Firstly, want to get rid of fire, it sucks. If I need power, I'll use Hellfire, but that pretty much sucks too. I don't think I'll need this magic ring because Azel's son is actually going to be a lot better than he ever was. In fact, he's actually really, really amazing. Now, yes, Thunder and Hellfire, but... Now, also you need to remember that Tiltu's son will start off with a wind tome. In fact, that will be the main thing he uses, so the other tomes he inherits aren't really all that important, but Thunder and Wind, just nice to have. Now, Tiltu, this is rather interesting. Sell Thoron. Yes, I actually mean that. Her daughter only starts with a B rank in Thunder, which means she can't actually use it. In fact, it's not possible for Thoron to be inherited at all. Which is quite interesting. On that note, it's actually not possible for anyone to inherit any axes, so you'll want Lex to sell all of his. And yes, the Winds Tome, yeah, very useful for Tiltu to pass on to her daughter. Because her daughter will come with Thunder, which is pretty good. Just giving her fire mainly just for the sake of completeness. But Wind is very useful. Wind magic is the best magic type in the game, and you'll want each of your mages to have at least one wind spell. And now for Brigid. Brigid is probably the most ridiculously simple character to make preparations for. Just make sure that she is paired, period, and you're fine. Her son will inherit the Ichival no matter what, and his starting inventory also contains a silver bow, so he's fine even if you want to conserve on uses of the Ichival. So basically, he's all set pretty much. All you need is the Ichival. That's all. Now, as for her daughter, yes, Brigid's daughter inherits from the father, not the mother. Which is pretty interesting, but what this means is that since I've paired with Brigid with Dew, Brigid's daughter is a thief. A rather underleveled thief, but basically a couple of swords will do okay. If she's been paired with Holland, she'll be able to use the hero sword, like, from the beginning, but don't actually give her one because, well, you'll see why. But with Dew, just make sure the return ring is a pretty helpful item to have if you're desperate, so I recommend giving that to her. But just make sure the prayer sword is good, and a magic sword. At least one magic sword is really helpful. So, right, that's pretty much it for preparations.